All right, hello. So today is August 31st, and it's the day after the full moon in Pisces, although the moon is still in Pisces. The moon is pretty much opposite Mercury retrograde right now, and it's a bit past the being directly opposite the sun, but so I guess it's still technically a full moon. Anyways, yesterday I made a video for this astrology channel that was about Mars in Libra mainly, and I was thinking that I've been organizing my channel in such a way that I haven't been doing full moon videos or lunation videos, but there's something going on with this particular full moon in Pisces that I feel the need to talk about some stuff, and I guess I should also just say there's this thing about one of the things that I have going on that I seem to be unable to not to bring up is that I have this like psychiatric history and stuff like this, right? And that part of where I'm at in my life is that I just kind of want to like put a lot of the stuff in the rear view mirror and move on from it, and that there's certain things that I made a video before about Saturn in Pisces having to do with this quality of disillusionment and being, that in some way to be awake is to be like awake in a kind of a sober, grounded way, and to be kind of disillusioned with some of the, I don't know, flights of fantasy or something like that. But there's certain things about, like, I used to be involved in this community of like around spiritual emergence, and I think a lot of that kind of just speaks for itself in terms of there's the whole question of, there's like these cliches, like these memes or articles like, are we drugging our prophets and healers and all this kind of stuff, or the Gabor Mate's myth of normal, like maybe what does it mean to be crazy in an insane society? But it's like I don't want to get too lost in this. I want to just focus more on, the whole thing, though, is I think at the end of the day, whether you hide the fact that you have a diagnosis or you have a condition or not, that expression, like, don't piss on my feet and tell me it's raining? It's like, at some point, you can invest all the time and energy you want into trying to portray what you have going on in a certain light, but if you do have a problem, it's going to show through one way or another, right? So, like, I'm kind of disillusioned in that respect of, like, people, it's like being not to be in denial that you have a problem, or not to try to use this kind of thing to sugarcoat everything or whatever, right? But that all being said, something that's happened recently, and this is the thing, is that I realize that I'm making this astrology channel, and, well, for one thing, I used to have a Facebook group called Current Events Astrology, which I paused, I'm suspended, I muted, and now, like, a lot of what I was doing on that group was posting news articles, and with minimal, just like notes of what aspect or what transit it goes with. Now, Canadians can't post news articles on Facebook at all, and whatever. I'm still kind of getting distracted from it. The main point, though, is that one of the things that happened recently was that the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan, which was damaged from the 2011 earthquake, flushed its radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. And the reason why I was bringing this up particularly with some sort of preface about my own, psychiatric history, my own mental health history, is that during the times when I was struggling more with mental health stuff, that this was one of the things that I guess you could say was triggering for me, although I don't really, it's not like a personal thing. It's like I did have a roommate that I lived with that was, used to post on Facebook about it, or be like, nobody's talking about the Fukushima problem, they're going to dump all this radioactive stuff into the ocean and all this. And so there's more of like something that I was like constellated into my own, like the part of being, if I'm part of a culture, part of a community, and what people are talking about and people around me. So it's not, I don't see it as being being disconnected from reality, but rather just relating to the people that are in my life and what actually concerns people in my life. But, during one of these states of being in a, going through what people might construe as like an episode or something, one of the things that happened for me was basically freaking out about Fukushima, right? And, I don't know how many times they've dumped radioactive water into the ocean over the years, or if this is just this is the big one, they finally did it. But, this raises this question of what is health, or what is mental health anyways, where if you are having a problem where you're upset about the problems in the environment, and you are having just experiencing that as just a legitimate emotional reaction, versus I could say I've recovered, I've come such a long way since then, because now we can have radioactive water dumped into the ocean, and I don't give a shit. I'm completely apathetic now. So that means I'm healed, right? And furthermore, instead of being concerned about these lofty things like whether the ocean is radioactive or not, I can be more caught up in my own personal problems, like am I a suitable marital partner or something like that. So I can see that the best way to attract a mate is basically to sign up for what would be like the oil patch in Alberta, right? Like I could go work for at Fort McMurray and pollute the environment, and and that's being mentally healthy, basically, because you're a productive, economically productive member of society, and you're not freaking out about things like pollution, right? I don't know. I don't want to be like condescending or like belligerent about it, but I mean, I guess what I've been flagged to say is that I think there's quite a lot of things that I was, upset about in a sensitive state of mind going through psychosis or whatever you say, but it's not really psychosis if you're talking about actual things in the actual world and actual problems that we have to deal with, right? But it's considered to be not psychotic to just basically be numbed out by all this and continue, destructive habits in the name of, wanting to, be fruitful and multiply, right? There are certain things around this that I just felt like talking about, or felt like I can't just let this, I don't know, with this whole Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, like they did this dumping of the water into the ocean when we had Mercury retrograde in Virgo and Mars in opposition to Neptune. And I even made a video where I was talking about how this is kind of like, I wasn't even on my mind, but this Mars being wanting to take something out, but like now it's just in there and you can't take it out, right? And so we've passed the point of no return. There's nothing we can do about it, and it's just. And I was watching, and the thing is, I was not even really paying attention to this so much until I watched the latest Astrology Podcast episode where Austin Coppock brought it up. But Austin Coppock was also talking about this whole sense that it's like everything out there is toxic and trying to kill you, right? And this is like another thing that I dealt with when I was in psychosis, was like just freaking out that like after, like when I was freaking out about about Fukushima, I was really upset because like I like eating seafood, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to stop eating seafood because all the seafood's gonna be I mean, maybe it gets distributed throughout the ocean enough that it's not such a problem, or I don't know. I mean, I ended up just like blocking it out of my mind and eating seafood as much as I wanted to anyways without worrying about it. But like there are these kinds of things that like were, I had this thing where like this thing happened where my mom cooked seafood chowder right in the middle of me freaking out about Fukushima, and me just it could be very well that actual seafood chowder was not polluted and not poisonous and not toxic, but this whole kind of thing about like being in a toxic environment one way or another and freaking out about it, and like everything around you is trying to kill you or something, like that to me that's like psychosis, right? But it's not psychosis. This is the actual. It's cognizing some actual true fact of the actual world we live in, and it's like I was resisting getting into this yesterday because I acknowledged it, and I was just like, I'm going to focus on this Mars and Libra stuff and not, worry about this one so much. But, it's like with this on at the same time as all the wildfires and, the general sense of what they call eco-grief or ecological grief on top of all that. And there's this whole question about whether you're being negative or something like that. Like, is it a bad thing to express the negative side of this transit, or is it all about your entrepreneurial glow up? Like, what a time to shine, everybody. The fucking world's on fire and polluted with toxic shit. Now's the time to be an entrepreneur and reach your dreams, right? Can you understand? Maybe I may not be feeling it, right? I don't know. But the thing about why I'm bringing up that stuff, the entrepreneurial, hustle and grind wellness culture in the middle of this, is like another thing that I just thought worth mentioning was all this stuff about the Lionsgate portal, right? And there's, I'm not going to raise the issue of whether or not the 808 Lionsgate portal is like a legit astrology thing or not. That's kind of, you get into all the technical issues about the historical basis and all this kind of stuff. But if you just look at like what is actually going on in the world around said numerological events and instances of synchronicity or novelty, then I thought it was really interesting watching that astrology podcast to note that it was like, what day was it that the Maui wildfire started? Oh yeah, 0808, right? So it's kind of this thing about like, we have this whole culture of like astrologers being like, I don't know if it's the toxic positivity or if it's just like the entrepreneurial hustle culture, but making something like, oh, it's all about self-empowerment. And then is it not a slight bit of irony that like in this Lionsgate portal of, optimistic, self-empowerment, self-improvement, we're going to have a glow up life or whatever, the fucking Hawaii just like explodes into fire, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I also had this thing going on that I wasn't sure about if I should mention it, but I went for a walk before that happened, right? And I had this t-shirt that is like a green Hawaii t-shirt, right? I actually recorded a video for Venus Retrograde wearing a t-shirt that I got at a thrift store, Value Village. That was like, I just got it because of the color, but the graphic on it was a faded out, beachfront rentals Hawaii kind of t-shirt, right? And then I went walking. I recorded an astrology video for Venus Retrograde, and I went walking wearing that t-shirt, right? And then I went walking wearing that t-shirt, and then I had a thing of black goo fall on me from out of nowhere, right? And I'm thinking that it could have come from power lines, although I don't know what kind of black goo they use. Maybe it's something, I don't know, like power lines are black, and they have a bunch of stuff. Who knows what's up there? Maybe, like, I don't work with power lines. Maybe they have goo that falls off sometimes. Maybe that's what it was, right? But nonetheless, I related to this kind of in a weird, ominous fashion that this black goo had fallen on me as a kind of a bad omen or something. And at the time I was saying it personally in the sense that I was thinking that I had recorded a Venus retrograde video wearing this Hawaii t-shirt, and that maybe I was being too negative about like using this Venus retrograde to be like, not wanting to deal with old friends or being antisocial and having that mirrored back to me in this black goo falling on me. But then I'm starting to realize that what if the black goo was actually not about me, it was about the Hawaii t-shirt, and that the black goo was like an ominous warning for the Hawaii wildfires or something like this. I don't know, but I'm just putting that out there anyways, which, could also just me being crazy. I don't... But there's this whole thing, what can I say? This is one of the issues that I have. This is the whole thing, is that I do, in a sense, feel like I have recovered somewhat, but then, I don't know, maybe the way I'm acting in my videos just shows exactly where I'm at or how unrecovered I am, right? That maybe a normal, sane person wouldn't be making a video like this, right? Maybe this is just a testament to how still ill I am or something, right? But there's the thing about it that I find difficult is that we have the sort of understanding in the wellness community or the wellness culture that there are, let's say, altered states that are accessible through, let's say, psychedelic therapy or ayahuasca ceremonies, or even things like holotropic breath work or something like that, right? But that we have this kind of binary idea that there are certain things that are useful in terms of healing, right? And then there's something diametrically opposed to that, which we call an illness, right? And that it's not so much about what actually happened. You could have an ayahuasca ceremony that's very traumatic that leaves you in a hospital, but it's more of just healing that goes wrong. Whereas if you have a psychosis in a different setting, it's, you're not, there's nothing about wellness about it. You're just ill or something, right? I mean, maybe that is incorrect, because there are certain people, like there's a guy, John Weir Perry, who talked about psychosis as a renewal process. Like the psyche is trying to heal itself, right? And, I don't want to, I have heard anyways, it could be the whole, well, I am resistant to talk about things like suicide on this channel. I don't know. I've noticed that people tend to avoid talking about those things. It could be because, like, I remember watching this Teal Swan documentary, and Teal Swan got in a lot of trouble because she was trying to give people, like, suicide self-help support video, but, like, it could very well be taken the wrong way and push people over the edge towards, this could be something you don't want to get into, right? I don't know. I'm not even sure where I would be going with the conversation about suicide right now. But, this whole thing about, like, what was I saying? Like, healing versus being sick, and that, like, we have this kind of thing where you can talk, like, people, it's completely okay now for people to talk about visionary experiences and things that are, like, experiencing states of mind that are beyond the ordinary, insofar as it's structured into this thing where, I'm doing it in a context where society, regardless of what actually happens in that context, because, you could go to a official ayahuasca ceremony, get fucked up, and get stuck in a psych ward for 3 months, and but it still doesn't really matter how often that happens. It's still, we just call this healing, and doing this as a productive thing that in the end makes us well, and wellness is being a producer, being a productive entrepreneur, who contributes to society, who's not put off by the fact that, the world's burning down around us, and this kind of stuff, right? That this is apparently what wellness is, but if you're having a bad time, then that's like psychosis, or that's a mental illness, and that it's not marketable, right? Because, that there's this kind of dichotomy there, right? And I don't know, or maybe it's best to leave it that way. Maybe it's best not to try to profit off of these kinds of things, right? But there's something about all this that there's another point that I wanted to make. I don't know. The main thing for me, anyways, or the other thing with this Saturn and Neptune and Pisces and the full moon, or just what I notice happening around all this is, like, I don't know if anybody else relates to this, but I just feel the need to express this part of it, right? Is that, I don't want to, again, bring up my chart so much, but I guess it's worth mentioning with this. I do have, a Sun, Moon, Saturn, Uranus, stellium, all those planets together. And I don't want to give my whole chart out, but, I was talking to a friend of mine at one point in time about my astrology chart, and this guy was he's not like a trained astrologer, but he was up enough with it that and I'm trying to, trying to talk to him about how I understood my own chart and stuff like that. And what this guy kind of suggested was that there's something going on in my chart which was kind of like being, like, forever young, or being youthful into old age, or having this, not really aging, having the spirit of, like, ongoing youth. And I have to admit that throughout the course of my life, I think I look a lot younger than other people that are my age, and I might often get interpreted, people might think that I'm younger than I am. But I mean, and like I have to admit that all of this is just, there's certain things on my mind from watching. I only watched the first half of the latest Astrology Podcast episode, but they were mentioning the guy who is the funny vampire guy who's like drinking his son's blood, trying to attain eternal youth, or like trying out all these anti-aging things, and that this guy has a Sun-Saturn conjunction. So I'm like, okay, I can kind of relate to that in the sense that like but the thing is, for me, it's like, I have this thing where it's not that I want to try to be young or that I want to try to stay young, but actually with this Saturn and Neptune and Pisces transit, I feel a lot of pressure to grow up, basically, right? And that I don't like, just to be very straight up about it, that I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm currently living at my mom's house with my sister, and that, regardless of how old my mom is, and regardless of how old I and my sister are, that it's that just being in the situation of living in the house that I lived in we moved in this house when I was like 4 years old or something like that, pretty young, that this is my childhood house growing up, that I had lived all these years and stuff like this. But I don't know if like your parents have this way of like treating you as if you're always just a teenager or something like that, but it just, like, something about the circumstance just always makes me, it doesn't make me feel like I'm the age that I am. It makes me feel like I'm stuck in this, but it's not really like being stuck in this juvenile thing, because if I was stuck in this juvenile thing, I don't think I'd feel this urge to grow up in some way, right? And that there's certain things that I am considering doing. Like, I have to admit that I don't have a driver's license, and it's highly unusual for people my age not to have a driver's license. And so I'm thinking that one of the things I might do is actually get my driver's license and get a car. And, I've been off work for a long time. I'm considering just, maybe I will get just a regular, ordinary, boring day job or something, right? I'm also considering maybe going to college or university. But the thing is, it's like, it's not just, like, one of the problems that I have is that I don't know how, maybe I'll just change gears and sort of describe this, right? Is that, like, I go through phases, I went through this phase where I quit playing video games for a long period of time for a number of reasons. Mainly, I think in some sense there's a certain kind of social mind, or like kind of I was wanting to disconnect from like the gamer hive mind for a while, right? And not really wanting to be part of that scene. And then in more recent years, I decided, I'll play Elden Ring, or maybe I'll play some games or something like that. And I have to admit, I do actually quite enjoy playing Elden Ring and stuff like this. But there's this, this kind of thing about, I have an association with playing video games, playing computer games, of like something that I would do when I was young, when I was a kid. But the thing is, what's funny is that when I see my friends online, if I have friends on social media, or people that I would have, like, let's say if I was, in that age where you're like preteen, like you're 12 years old and you're having sleepovers with friends playing video games, and if I look at those friends are like, they're still they seem like they're the same kids that just play video games and basically are the same people they were when they're 12 years old, but now they're just a mid-30s version of that, but they essentially have the same lifestyle, of like play, and it's like, I don't want to criticize other people, but I'm just saying, for some reason it seems to be normal in our culture to be like that. I don't want to say that, criticize people saying that, like, maybe if that's your thing, and, I shouldn't judge, right? But, and the thing is, I'm just trying to say that this game came out called Armored Core 6, right? And I used to play the old Armored Core on the PlayStation, so I'm like, I will try playing Armored Core 6, and in a way, it was impressive because I have to admit, if you try playing old PlayStation games on emulators, they would look really bad, right? And now there's all these things that I couldn't afford a fancy computer with the latest graphics card so I had to just like you play Quake online as a kid and you can just barely run it, but you're playing anyways, right? But like nowadays, I could afford the fancy shit and running I got a mid-range graphics card. I could probably I could just sit there. You know what I'm trying to say? Is like I could just give up on life and play, like World of Warcraft or something like that. But there's such a strong urge not to do that, or that I don't want to just have my life get stolen playing some stupid video game where meanwhile the fucking world burns down and the fucking the radioactive ocean and the fucking world on fire and wars and meanwhile you put on your VR headset and fucking just tune out from the whole thing. I don't want to live that way. I want to live in an actual real world in a real community with real people doing real stuff. I don't want it to be like, okay, so I will do that and I'll work some boring ass I don't know. I guess jobs are often boring. So I guess if I do go to work, I may get stuck with a boring... the point is, I don't want to work a 40-hour week or more and then just come home and basically get plugged into a virtual reality fucking simulation machine rather than having a real fucking life. It's not that I don't want... I can't live like that. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, right? And it's like playing these games that are like, your Gundam, you kind of like giant rope. Like I got this thing where for some reason, I do like stuff like Neon Genesis Evangelion, and there's something about the aesthetic of like Japanese mecha stuff that is like, I still kind of like that, for some reason. I don't know why. But when it comes to like trying to play a video, it feels like when you're a kid playing with like toys and you've got your Transformers and you're like, shoo, 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 you're like, it's like somebody turned that experience of being 3 years old and having a bunch of fucking war toys that are designed by the military industrial complex basically, and then turning that into a instead of imagining that, you just have a computer render that for you, so you don't even have to have an imagination anymore. A computer just does your imagining for you, right? And then you are and you get this simulation of like, oh wow, this is like playing with toys when I'm 3 years old, and now I'm a 30-year-old. I hate my fucking life, and I live with my mom. And I'm not gonna do this fucking shit. I don't want to play. I don't want to be that kind of person. But it's like when you talk to your friends, this is the only fucking all your And this is the whole point though, is that I have a lot of friends that I've had a falling out with, right? And I don't know, and they probably are married, and they probably have kids, and they probably have careers, and but you know what the thing is? It's like, I don't know if I really want to know what their lives are like, I mean, it's one thing, I could pretend that they're all successful and all this kind of stuff, but what if these are just, they're probably just fucking, hate their lives and are just escaping into like some World of Warcraft, MMORPG or something like this, and it's like, it could just be really depressing the way that the people live, right? And it's like, this is not the life I want to live, okay? And so I mean, and this is the whole thing, is like, I don't know if like I've talked to other people who have similar stuff going on, have similar mental health history, and they're like, it's like you could get a job and you could get a car, but it may, it's still the same, it may not actually be that different if you have a car. Or like, if I could, is it my life gonna change that much if I can drive? Like, where am I gonna do? Go drive out to go hang out? What am I gonna do? Right? Like, it'll like my experience doing stuff is gonna be that much different because I drove there rather than taking the bus. Like, is it really gonna change my life to have a car? Or am I just going to have more expenses to pay, right? Or am I just going to have more, and I'm going to have a job to pay for, I don't know. There's all things, I don't even particularly want a car necessarily, but there's a sort of thing that maybe if I have the car, maybe that will make me feel more like an adult. Maybe that will maybe there will be a community of other adults that I will suddenly fit into, and that I will feel, part of what's not just alienated, right? But, I have a feeling that it could just be all the things I do. I could just feel alienated and still just be part of this culture that I don't want to be in, right? And, and the other thing too is like, I don't know, maybe I said enough. Maybe this is enough about it. I mean, there's some other things that I could say, but I think if you basically can take what I'm saying here, and you can apply that to a lot of other things going on in the media and the culture that I don't that I have trouble with, right? Like, I don't want to watch Marvel comics movies. I don't want to, I don't want to fucking play with lightsabers like Star Wars or something like this. You know what I mean? Like, I could just be that like people grow, people have kids and then they have this whole culture that's about being a parent and like looking after your kid. But like what, like it seems that the parents are themselves just like, we have an adolescent cult. Or like, is it just me projecting that, or is that the actual thing, the world out there? Maybe I just feel too immature and I project that on the world around me or something like that. Or is it actually like we live in an infantile culture? I don't know, but that's for me. Saturn, I feel there's like this kind of thing where I can't, you know what I mean? Like it's like trying to play these video games. It's like, and just having this visceral kind of reaction. Like I gotta just uninstall all this stuff off my computer and read more Dostoevsky novels or something like that. Like I just can't do it. And I really don't want to be friends with the people who do this stuff. Really, I mean, it really does not, or like I don't know. I feel at least I don't know. Hopefully, this is again. I was thinking about not making this video because I sort of like had trouble sleeping last night, and I feel like the nature of what I'm talking about is somewhat triggering. But maybe it helps to just have this as an avenue to express myself. I don't know if like, if anybody's gonna like this in terms of an astrology video, but this is how I'm relating to the Saturn Neptune stuff. And there's something about like needing to get real and grow up and like, and but not even that. Like I couldn't enjoy this stuff if I wanted to. Like I could download these games and try to play, but I can't. I'm just having a really hard time with it. All right, thanks for watching.